Everyone. So I want to talk to you guys about the liberal world order and how it really is crumbling. I mean, this is quite obvious. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a geopolitical PhD graduate or whatever to understand that this is the reality. So there was an interesting article that was published today by Foreign Policy. It's entitled Liberal Illusions Cause the Ukraine Crisis, written by Stephen M. Walt. And Walt makes some pretty interesting observations about the liberal order and how it is crumbling. So, Walt gets a little bit into the history of the liberal order, the liberal world order, and how it was this idea that the US began to pursue after the Cold War. And it basically envisioned this world where nations would adopt democracy, and together all these democracies of the world would just make lots of money. And that is happening, right? That definitely is happening. That was the goal of the liberal world order, and that has been occurring, no doubt. Um, and part of expanding this order, this world order, was expanding NATO. So, really, this project, this idea of the liberal world order, is merely the American empire. That's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about the expansion of the American empire. And America has expanded its empire through NATO membership by getting as many countries to join NATO. And as more countries joined NATO, uh, America's sphere of influence expanded. And America continuously got more and more countries to join NATO and was getting closer and closer to Russia. And in April of 2008, the United States, NATO, invited Georgia to become a member of NATO. And in August of that same year, Russia and Georgia went to war against each other. I don't think that it was really a coincidence because at the end of the day, the Russian Georgian War was a war between NATO and Russia. Georgia was America's proxy, and Russia was fighting for the advancement of its empire. And this article that I read today, it talked about how America inviting Georgia to join NATO really proved to be a blunder against the liberal world order because it really showed that eventually it showed that Russia wasn't exactly something to be messed with. And America's idea of just getting all of these countries to adopt democracy and make money with other democracies, it wasn't going to happen in its totality. It wasn't going to take over the world because Russia. That's why, because Russia does not want NATO to take every single country in the world. Russia does not want NATO to take countries or to absorb countries that are, or that really Russia considers to be a part of its sphere of influence. And it really reminds me of the Ukraine. You look at the whole situation that's been going on in Ukraine since 2014. Um, and then you look at what's been going on right now, how you have this huge buildup of Russian troops around Ukraine. And you have the EU getting more and more exasperated by Russia. And you have the fact that over 10,000 people have been killed because of the war between the Russians and the Ukrainians. The fact that the Europeans and the Americans have been giving anti-tank rockets, anti-tank weaponry to the Ukrainians. It really goes to show that, and this may be a hot take or a controversial take or whatever, but I think it's safe to say that when the next global conflict happens, it's inevitable that Ukraine is going to be a significant part of the picture. It's just obvious to me because I mean, there's already like there's already been a war going on there since 2014. Russia annexed Crimea. Russia has been through its proxies. Russia has been um, really advancing itself in eastern Ukraine, in Donbass. It's obvious to me that Russia is going to be a big part of the picture. I think it's not like a far-fetched thing to say. And Ukraine will be a part of I think Ukraine will have a significant role to play within the next World War, just like it did during the First World War and the Second World War. During the First World War, you had the Brest-Litovsk conference between Germany and all of her allies, and the Germans basically told the Bolsheviks, if you want us to stop killing you guys, you're going to have to give us concessions. You're going to have to give us Ukraine. And eventually the Germans took control of Ukraine, although the Germans withdrew um, not too not too long after that. But in the Second World War, the Germans again took control of the Ukraine. So the Ukraine has a huge geopolitical position, and that's not going away. That's still there. It's still there. So the liberal world order is it's in a way crumbling. I mean, this idea of, well, because the ideology that underlined this project was that if countries could just adopt democracy, then there will be no wars, right? They're not going to be fighting each other. Democracies won't fight each other, and they're just going to want to make money. And people believed that through globalization, war could be prevented, right? Another global conflict could be prevented. Um, and people think that with the fact that humans are more connected now than we ever have been, mainly because of iPhones, that we're gonna have like we're more and more close together, right? We can get rid of old prejudices and we can kill off old rivalries, and not literally kill off, but we could end old rivalries, and we can just enter sort of this new world. But I remember during the Syrian civil war, when the civil war first broke out, I remember watching many execution videos. And I wasn't doing this because, oh, I like watching that stuff. I was doing it because I was writing about what was happening in Syria at the time. And one thing that I noticed is that in almost every single one of these horrific videos where people were getting beheaded and executed, you had people filming the slaughter with their cell phones. And I made an observation back in, I think it was in 2012, 2013, when the Syrian conflict was still pretty fresh, that people believe that because we have technology, we have this such advanced technology, that we're so connected because of cell phones and the internet, that we're just going to have a much more peaceful existence. And the fact that you have people using their smartphones to film murder, yeah, it doesn't prevent it. You can have all of the democracies in the world, you could have all of the networking technology in the world. It doesn't end human evil, and it doesn't end avarice and greed and bloodlust and cruelty. It doesn't end any of these things. And as long as you have that evil, you're going to have war. And old rivalries are just going to return. It's really just as simple as that. There's a quote from this article by Stephen M. Walt that I thought was pretty interesting. It says here, US President Joe Biden has already made it clear that the United States will not go to war to defend Ukraine. And those who think it can and should, in an area that lies right next door to Russia, apparently believe we are still in the unipolar world of the 1990s and have a lot of attractive military options. And so basically, he's saying that America has no interest in actually having boots on the ground in Ukraine to fight against Russia. Like, America's never had that interest. If you look at every single conflict that America has had with Russia, it's always through a proxy. The Vietnam War, the Iraq War, uh, supporting rebels in Syria, all of these conflicts, be it what we did in Central America and Nicaragua, all of these conflicts that America got involved in or that led, these were all done as a way to counter Russia. And America has never directly fought Russia and will never directly fight the Russians because it would be absolutely suicide. America just won't do it. So America has no interest. Russia, if Russia invaded Ukraine tomorrow, America won't do anything. I guarantee it. America wouldn't do anything beyond just arming another army to do the dirty work, to do the fighting. America will not fight Russia. And I can't blame the United States for that. I'm not going to condemn America for that because it would be absolutely suicide and hundreds of thousands of US troops would die. It would be absolutely horrific. America has no interest in fighting the Russians, nor should it have an interest in fighting the Russians. Um, I think it would be absolutely crazy to fight against the regional superpower that helped the US defeat the Third Reich. I think that's crazy. So Russia could invade Ukraine tomorrow, and America won't do jack diddly squat about it. And Russia knows this. That's why when NATO invited Georgia to join the NATO alliance, um, Russia obviously didn't like that. And within that same year, Russia invaded Georgia. And what did America do about it? Nothing. I mean, Russia carved out its little government in Georgia. What is it? The Republic of East Ossetia or something like that. There was two of them. There was East Ossetia and there was Abkhazia. Two little satellite governments that Russia sort of carved out in Georgia. They're not internationally known, but I'm pretty certain if you were to go into those two little regions, they would tell you we're our own independent country and we're basically an ally of Russia. Same thing with the people in Donbass. They will tell you, no, we're forming our own country. And what has America done to stop Russian advancement, other than just arming some proxy or training and arming some proxy? Because America can't directly fight against Russia, and Russia knows this. So the United States is going to be more and more relying on the EU to do something about Russia. And America is getting more and more deeper into isolationism. And so as that happens, as that intensifies, as that isolationism becomes more and more conspicuous, Russia is going to get more and more emboldened because America's not going to get involved in things like it used to. And the EU is going to get more and more emboldened to commence its own pursuit towards militarization or militarism and intensifying its own policy of militarization. And so I think eventually the Europeans and the Russians are just going to fight each other just like they did in the Second World War. I think that is going to be the end result of it all. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. You guys just heard some theology. God bless.